An amazing network of investors, CEOs, government officials. Every governor in the country is struggling with this question of when to reopen the economy. Where do we draw the line between safeguarding public health and getting back to work?
Well, Eric, it's good to be with you today. And the line is something that has emerged over time here. Clearly, in places like New York, where you had this significant upswing in cases that needed to be treated, and hospitals and first responders were overwhelmed, you needed to step in and try to break the back of it and do the types of things that have been done since really the middle of March, the end of March. The trick now is to try to begin to open up so that we can deal with the economic effects and the economic implications of COVID-19. And the longer there's a gap where small business, and we'll spend time talking about small business, is unable to function, and in many of these small businesses, revenues have gone to zero, the harder it will be to gear it up and get, at this point, almost 30 million Americans back to work.
So you mentioned small business and large business. Lots of them have zero revenue right now. Greg, the more people find out about the government bailout, the more outrage there is. Shake Shack, as you know, is a favorite target, but other restaurant chains, right? Potbelly, Sweetgreen, Kura Sushi took bailout money and have since given it back. Thanks to ESPN, as you may have seen, we now know that $4.6 million went to the Los Angeles Lakers of the NBA. What is going on?
Well, first of all, let's start with what the federal government was trying to do here, because I give Secretary Mnuchin a lot of credit for trying to move quickly, given the severity with which this all started to come to pass. The trick up front here was to try to get money to small business. And remember, Eric, we have 30 million small businesses in this country employing 60 million Americans. It's nearly half of the people employed in the country. There was really no way to get to so many businesses quickly unless they came up with something like the plan that they put in place, where the money's being dispersed through banks.
There's no question, Greg, there was always going to be devil in the details, but you have spent much of your career advising CEOs. I want you to tell me, and by extension the rest of the world, and some of those CEOs listening right now, what should they be thinking when it comes to reaching their hand out for government money?
Well, this is a time when people really do need to come together and make sure they're focusing on doing the right thing in every aspect of their lives. I mean, this is a once-in-a-generation pandemic. It's something that none of us have really ever lived through before. I guess a lot to compare this to other crises. This is different in so many ways. So the whole intent here up front was to try to get a great small business, and we have so many in the United States. So much of the job growth in the last 10 years has been in the small business sector. We're trying to get a great small business through this time when we really need to shut down for health reasons, and because of all the pressure on first responders in cities like New York.
But they're not getting the money. They're not getting the money so long as larger companies, publicly traded companies with access to other forms of financing, companies that are owned by wealthy individuals, for example, are availing themselves of that program, using the connections that they have with the banks to jump to the front of the queue.
Yeah, that's where I was going. People ought to be doing the right thing. These 30 million small businesses employing 60 million people, some of whom have seen their revenues go to zero, that was the intent. That's what the federal government's trying to step in and take care of. And as Americans, that's what we want to see. If you had a great small business before this, and all of a sudden, for reasons outside your control, your revenues go to zero because of a public health emergency, and the government puts in place a program to try to bridge your business, then that's the business that we want to help. People who are businesses that aren't in that position and that are coming at it from a different direction ought not to be getting in line and making the whole focus here on people taking advantage of the system as opposed to those we're trying to help.
Greg, as you may have seen today, Elizabeth Warren and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez proposed a bill that would temporarily ban corporate M&A. I want to know what you think about that, and I also want to know what it tells you about the direction of economic debate as we head toward the election.
Well, Eric, the second half of your question is a very interesting one. And clearly, we're going to have a lot of debate around that as we head toward this election. On the bill itself, I just don't agree with that. I think that there are going to be deals that take place where you might have a business that's struggling and can find a good partner, and the buyer helps that business come through this difficult time. The employees don't lose their jobs. The business continues to thrive going forward. There's lots of good reasons why private sector M&A, to the extent that it can happen at this time, should happen. Now, a lot of deals are already on hold because of the challenges in the market. Buyers and sellers, the buyer had one price expectation, 2 months ago. The seller had a different one. Coming back together is hard enough without the government trying to get involved in something that really isn't going to preserve jobs, that isn't going to help with growth coming out of this. So I don't agree with that. And it does obviously highlight, the debate that's coming as we head into this presidential election around private sector, public sector, and where the lines should be drawn.
Greg, James Gorman, your former colleague at Morgan Stanley, told me 2 weeks ago that he foresees needing, quote unquote, much less real estate after the pandemic is over. You talk to a lot of CEOs. What kinds of changes do you foresee for government and for business and for the economy?
Well, in terms of the real estate question, everybody would agree with this. And our company went from working in offices to the cloud virtually overnight. And we've been able to function really on a seamless basis since that time. And there are other companies that are doing that as well. So there is no question that remote work is different today than it was just 2 months ago. And there will be more people who do that at every company, big and small, going forward. Having said that, I still think there's a creative energy that comes from people working together in an office. And I think it will be more at the margin than really redefining the way people work together. But Eric, on a broader basis, I think one of the things that comes out of everything that we've been through in the last 2 months is that there are certain essential items that are going to be made in the United States and by countries for their own people all over the world. So we currently outsource, a lot of our antibiotics and personal safety items, masks, and all the things that have been in the media. Those things are coming back to each country, and those types of things will be made here going forward. Supply chains for things like that will also come back closer to home. So there will be some longer term changes that are more fundamental that come out of this.